Pueblo Chieftain is one of the sponsors for this evening's event, along with the Governance Task Force of the 2020 Commission, Pueblo Community College's Center for New Media, and Pueblo Memorial Hall. And it's really wonderful to be in this gorgeous facility this evening, and we appreciate your attending and watching on television. The format for tonight's forum, and we call it a forum because it's really not a debate. City Council, the format's a little bit different. In this case, we have 5 candidates running for 2 seats, so it's really the candidate that you prefer, as opposed to the more traditional one-on-one type of race that's partisan. And so what we'll do this evening is each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves to you, and after that we'll begin a series of questions with each candidate getting 2 minutes to respond to the question. And then if they have other thoughts or a rebuttal or other comments, they can have another minute after that. And so we'll try to get through it back and forth so we can keep it lively. And then at the end of that session, somewhere about an hour and 15 minutes or so from now, then we'll do a roundup session with 2-minute summaries by each candidate. And then we'll take about a 15-minute break, and then we will be doing it for the other 2 races for Pueblo City Council. So, there's no scientific way to flip a coin for 5 candidates, so what we're going to do is just start here at the end with Larry Atencio, and we'll move our way down. So, Larry?
Well, good evening. My name is Larry Atencio, and I'm a lifelong resident of Colorado. I came here when I was 5 years old, and I grew up on the Lower East Side of Pueblo, went to high school at East High School, graduated from there, went to Southern Colorado State College, where I got an industrial engineering technology degree, bachelor's degree in industrial engineering. And then after that, I got drafted, went into the military. Didn't do anything real exciting there, except that I was an airborne paratrooper, which I really enjoyed, and was very proud to serve my country in that capacity. When I came back, I went to work for the Pueblo City County Health Department as a sanitarian. There I got to work with all the municipal ordinances dealing with trash and cars and weeds and housing and food, just about everything you can imagine we took care of during that time. After that, I started my own business. It was LA Distributing, which is a manufacturing company. We make hard candy lollipops, and we distribute them all over the country. We primarily service the tourist industry. So after that, I got the opportunity to get appointed to City Council. I served 5 years on City Council, and one of the most enjoyable 5 years that I've ever spent. Dealing with the municipal codes and dealing with the budget and dealing with the things that have to be dealt with on City Council, one of my priorities was to grow the city, its budget, and to provide services for our constituents. I think I have the experience to do that based on my education and my experience with the City County Health Department. I also received a master's degree from the University of Northern Colorado in public administration, which is exactly what your department heads and city managers should have if they're going to be running those departments. So I have a broad range of experience, and I have a broad range of expertise in dealing with the things that have to be dealt with. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Chris Kaufman. Chris?
Thank you, Steve. I know most of you had a chance to see some of my bio this past Sunday, and I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for coming. And while I'm not afraid to place my resume up against anyone, it's not necessarily about what I say tonight, but about what a council person should do. It is having the courage to question, the will to understand, and to responsibly intercede on behalf of you, the residents of Pueblo. I alone, a brand new councilman in 2010, stood up in the face of the City Council as it pertained to Black Hills Energy and the very real and now proven rate increase that you all would receive. I asked the council 2 questions. Can we at least forewarn the residents of any looming potential rate increase, which was said no. And I asked, can we at least go out for proposals to see if there are additional electrical providers? After all, it was a 20-year contract that we were intending to get ourselves into. So I interceded for you. I have asked the question both to city staff and to 1A committee how we can justify sending $1.6 million from the Pueblo residents to the Pikes Peak Humane Society with little to no idea how much it costs to run just the Pueblo entity. I established my own economic development strategy summit to better understand what issues this city faces to better job creation. Why? I feel as an elected leader very responsible for the 10% unemployment rate or so. In fact, you should absolutely hold your city, your elected government accountable to job growth in all sectors. And I created the first entity set aside to recruit, retain, and grow small business and retail here in Pueblo, the Pueblo City Center Partnership. Tonight you will hear words, you will hear ideas. But I ask you, base your decision to vote not on words alone, but on proven character. Know what you will get from your council person. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Timothy Lopez. Timothy?
Hello, everybody. How are you this evening? Thank you for coming. My name is Timothy Lopez, and I have lived in Pueblo, Colorado my whole life. I went to Centennial High School, where I excelled in music. I then attempted to join the Army Reserves. I was injured in training and unfortunately was not able to continue, but it was one of the best learning experiences of my life, and I like to carry the lessons I learned from the military in everything I do. After that, I went to CSU Pueblo, where I was a biochem major, pre-med emphasis. I studied every form of science there is, so I believe that if we can bring a form of scientific analysis and strict numbers to how we interpret, how we deal with budget and revenue creation, stuff like that, it would be really helpful. I then went on last year to work for President Obama's campaign. I walked around, I knocked on hundreds of doors, registered thousands of voters, and I probably talked to some of you in this room, and you had a bunch of concerns that you had to address with our city, and we, at the time, came up with creative solutions as a collective to address them as they needed to be, more prudently and collectively with the city, not just the council members. So I believe that I can bring a degree of community involvement back to our city if elected. I can definitely do that. I am a very compromising negotiator when it comes to dealings with other people, and I believe in all sides of an argument being equally and in all fairness brought into how we address things in the budget and in all things. Thank you.
Okay, our next candidate is Brian Mader. Brian?
Good evening. My name is Brian Mader, and I'm a candidate for Pueblo City Council at large. I'm happy to be here tonight, and I'm committed to work hard as hard as possible to connect with all Puebloans. I understand the issues, and I know we need to come together to establish a leadership team to get our community to moving forward. I'm no stranger to hard work. I started my career working as a roofer when I was 14 years old. 10 years ago, I started All-Star Roofing in the basement of my home. Today, I'm an owner of three small businesses that are staffed year-round with 20 employees. I started attending the city council work sessions and regular meetings back in April. When I was first approached about running for council, I went online and became familiar with all the city departments. I studied the budgets for the last 3 years and was amazed at the responsibility the budget implied. It was clear to me that the job of a city council member was far from simple and would require dedication, time, and knowledge to serve the citizens of Pueblo. I evaluated my life and work experiences and decided I could qualify to serve on city council. It's time to get Pueblo on the move. We must act. We must make a Pueblo city schools excellent, safe, friendly neighborhoods, and market our excellent physical and mental health care systems. We need to maximize business opportunities and eliminate governmental roadblocks without sacrificing safety or the quality of life. It's good to work hard, but we also need to score some touchdowns. You need to understand your business and be honest and trustworthy. For your team to be successful, you must embrace the objectives and execute actions based on a good, data-driven plan. As an elected official, I will cooperate and recognize that the leadership is not exclusive to one entity. As an elected official, As the elected officials move forward, so will Pueblo. Thank you.
And our next candidate is Steve Nawrocki. Steve?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. First of all, let me say it's an honor being here tonight with all the other candidates. There's four other individuals that want to do public service, and I don't think there's anything greater than serving your community. So I'd like to express my appreciation to all of them for being willing to put themselves out there. I've been the executive director of 3 different organizations the past 35 years, and have been very proud to be involved in public service. Presently, I'm the city council president, and been on council for 4 years now. I can't believe how time flies. I can't really point to one thing that I can say that I accomplished all by myself. Collectively, I think that's where our strength is on city council, is that we're able to debate, to have civil discourse, and come up with solutions. I think one of the things that just came out in the news recently, the fact that we've been awarded $108 million to start finally fixing our interstate system, to be able to take care of 6 bridges at a separate lane, 3rd lane, eastbound I-50, and then also pave 4th Street. You know, this is an example of where we had 2 governmental entities that have worked together, and we have an incredible staff and a group of elected officials that have been committed to not kicking the can down the road and finally decide that they're going to accept what the freeway is. And now, over the next 5 years, we're going to see some progress take place. I really do feel it's a collaborative effort when you sit on city council, and the better that you can work together, and the stronger that you disagree, I think that's also very positive. But at the end of the day, you need to come together and do what's best for the community. So again, I look forward to serving for 4 more years. Thank you.
Okay, we'll begin the question and answer portion. We'll start with Steve down at this end. We'll work our way across. Steve, are you in favor of or opposed to the ballot issue that would provide funding for select Pueblo nonprofits?
You know, I am supporting 1A. And when you take a look at those 6 different entities, they all play an important role in the community. You take a look at the animal shelter. I mean, it's really not a luxury. There's a great need in our community to have a well-run, well-staffed animal shelter. Unfortunately, disproportionately for the size of our community, we have an incredible animal problem. And so it's good to have professionals in our community that are making sure that they can address that on a daily basis. And again, it's a service that we need in our community. The Arts Center, how proud are we of our Arts Center? It's a place that we bring our family, our friends, and company when they come from out of town. It's been in existence since the early 70s. It's a landmark in our community, and I think it deserves to be perpetuated for future generations. The zoo, how many cities our size have a zoo and a nonprofit that runs it so well? Again, I think it's an educational facility and an attraction for our community. The Nature Center, what a great opportunity is to expose our kids who, in most cases, never really get a chance. A lot of the kids get out of the city, and right on their doorstep, they have an opportunity to be exposed to nature. The Riverwalk, the Heart Project, this is something our community invested in. We voted to do this. I think we have a responsibility to continue to support it and to help make it flourish. And finally, the State Fair. The State Fair, what a landmark to our community. We are so identified with it, and I think it would be criminal for us not to continue to support that. And again, it's a draw for our community, and it's something to be proud that we have it. So undoubtedly, I'm supportive of 1A. Thank you.
Okay, Brian?
Thank you for the question. Pueblo has played the Pikes Peak Humane Society a total of $2,255,000. The El Paso Humane Society went from $220,000 in 2009 to $520,000 in 2010. That's a 42% increase. I wonder what the long-term plan looked like, and if we couldn't manage the animal shelter ourselves and keep the money here in Pueblo. The Pueblo Zoo receives an annual average of $621,000 over the past 4 years, with an additional allocation for $25,000 for capital improvements. The Nature Center received $20,000 last year. The Riverwalk went from $302,000 in 2010 to $225,000 in 2013. I believe the state fair should try to continue funding via the lodging tax. The Sandal Crystal Arts Center is currently under county-owned management and owned. I think the question here is, are the amenities valuable or not? I think the right thing to do is to put the question in front of the people and see if the local government cannot afford these services, who can? Thank you.
Timothy?
I would like to start by bringing up the Pueblo Zoo. I had a wonderful opportunity to not only meet with the leaders out there, but to actually do some work out there, do some volunteer work. And they are desperately concerned about their lack of resources that are being contributed to them, and have expressed to me that they are dipping into their savings to help keep exhibits around that people want and to pay employees that the zoo actually needs. So improved funding for that would be a big plus, and as Councilman Nawrocki pointed out, 1A is a good measure that helps fund these projects. The animal shelter is indeed another one. I have walked around the city. I've talked to a lot of people who see stray dogs and animals just roaming around sometimes into traffic, and it can be dangerous to the citizens. So if we can keep them in a place that's safe for them and potentially get them adopted, that's a good thing as well. The Heart Project is a good project for Pueblo in that it brings in a lot of tourism. I had the wonderful luxury of being able to volunteer with the Pueblo Chamber of Commerce and at the Pueblo Visitor Information Center out at the El Pueblo Museum, and there are people that come from all around the world, not around the world actually, to see our Riverwalk project, and it can be something to be expanded on and create jobs in construction and tourism. Dollars can definitely contribute to our deficits for our budget. And the last thing I'd like to leave off with is the State Fairgrounds, which is one of our probably largest money makers here in the city of Pueblo in terms of lodging taxes. It brings in a lot of tourism dollars, and we need to keep that funded as best as we can. Thank you.
Chris?
Thank you. You know, in a lot of respects, I was very disappointed in this tax measure, because I think something of this magnitude should really have some very distinct research. I don't think enough was done. I think it's going to leave some of these organizations capital project heavy and operationally a little bit starved. You know, if there was a preference out there, if the city was going to give us one new tax, why wouldn't we have considered a public safety tax to enhance our police, fire, and humane society? But in that, I did question the reality of sending $1.6 million to Colorado Springs unaccountable. I found that to be an issue. We have been asking the Humane Society, how much does it cost to run a Humane Society in Pueblo? And we can't get a real definitive number. That all being said, the organizations that have come as to be a part of this, I absolutely adore. My goal, one of my goals of getting on city council was public beautification and quality of life. I think we run into more economic development entities that walk away from this community because we have not put enough effort into quality of life. And so when I had finally sat down with the Humane Society, got some questions answered, got some other questions answered, I threw my name in the hat to support it. I am a big believer in quality of life, and I do believe that these are assets to our community that we absolutely have to take a hard look at supporting. And while I don't know all of the guts behind all of this, because it's been a very fast pace. I mean, we're 3 weeks from the vote now, and still trying to understand all this. But I do believe that this is an important measure for this community.
Larry?
I do not support 1A, and I'll give you some reasons why. The animal shelter, Riverwalk, and the state fair should be dealt with by city administration and county administrations. Those things should be negotiated and taken care of by the administration. The Riverwalk belongs to the city. The grounds and the buildings belong to the city. That entity should be under Parks and Recreation. That's where that thing should be. The Art Center and the zoo, they really are 501c3 cultural, artistic endeavors. I supported the zoo wholeheartedly when I was on city council with their Black Rhinos exhibit. The Art Center, I can't help but support the Art Center, but I can't support this measure. The Art Center, I was a dancer for 18 years, and I danced at the Art Center, performed on that stage. I love the Art Center, but this is definitely the wrong way to support those organizations. The proponents say that poor people aren't going to suffer because of it, because they buy groceries and things. Well, they also buy hard goods too. And when they have to pay extra tax on one purchase, their next purchase is not going to be of less quality and of a lesser price because they had to pay more for the price the purchase before. It's not as if they don't buy those items, and they're going to end up living poorer because of it. And I don't know that they really enjoy the attributes and the things that these 6 organizations give to the rest of us. Poor folks don't go to the Art Center that much. Poor folks don't go to the zoo that much. Poor folks don't go to the Riverwalk that much. Yet they support it with their sales tax contributions. I definitely am against it because I think it's going to hurt people, especially the lower classes, a little bit more. And for those of you who are making in the tens of hundreds of thousands, whatever you're making, art is great, but we have to think about other people too.
Okay, each candidate will have a minute for any other thoughts on the topic. Steve, do you have anything?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Steve. You know, I asked myself the question, what would this community look like without those 6 different entities? And I briefly described what I thought they brought, not only to me, but to other people in the community. And I can appreciate the fact that we have a lot of people that might not necessarily have the opportunity to participate, but it really is about quality of life. And in our community, I think is committed to quality of life, and I cannot help but to support it, because I don't think we'd want to live in a community that didn't have those kinds of amenities. So again, thank you for the opportunity to express my opinion.
Okay. Brian?
I guess the question is, who can afford it? Those who can pay will, and those who can't won't. Thank you.
Timothy, anything else?
I would like to point out that not only the measures in 1A, but other nonprofit activities can in the future and should in the future, after we've had the opportunity to generate a little bit more revenue and put some more backing under it. We can do things like improve homeless shelters in this city. We can improve, like Mr. Atencio said, the arts, and try to get the Pueblo Symphony, things of that nature, and get people involved in things like that. And our children youth outreach programs are something we could also do in the future. And then we can also help with substance abuse programs for some of our citizens that could really probably use a little bit of help with that. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, I just want to point out, you know, this community has very, very generous citizens that continue to give, have given and continue to give to organizations on a charitable basis. And it's year after year, and it continues to be just an unbelievable thing that they continue to give. I look at the Art Center. It was built in the late 60s, and not many of us would probably know that it's facing $1.5 million of severe damage. Water is leaking underneath all the concrete. And for a government to come in and try and fix all of this city is $110 to $130 million behind in its own infrastructure. Trying to raise that kind of money is almost impossible. especially when you think about raising that kind of money for a not-for-profit. So I think it's important that we support the citizens that have generously given to these organizations and will continue to do so by utilizing a sales tax that's going to be beneficial to help all. Thank you.
Larry?
Should be said that if 1A does not pass, those organizations aren't going to go away. They're being funded now. They're being funded at a level that is supporting them. They might be hurting like other organizations are, but they're not going to go away. And they'll continue to survive, and they'll continue to grow because people in this city do support those organizations. And I don't think they'll be hurt by them. If we really want to do a half-cent sales tax, let's do a half-cent sales tax. Take that $7 million a year that it's going to collect and send as many people who want to go to college or get some training and get them into college and get them some training. That would be worthwhile half-cent sales tax. Cooperate with Colorado State University and start a robotics program, for instance, so that manufacturers who come into this town who are bringing their automated assembly lines here will have a workforce that will get them the kind of people that they need to work for them.
Okay. Brian, you'll handle this question first. There's a bit of a gamble on this amendment. If it doesn't go through, there's going to be budget issues, and given that the large majority of the city's budget is dedicated to salaries, if you have to, would you consider a plan to freeze or even cut salaries across the board in order to maintain current staffing levels?
I feel at the time that we need to do a lot of more, we need to gather some data. We need to realign the budget around priorities. I feel that every department needs to be responsible. I would like to have the city manager come in and meet with each department head and with the council at the time and go over each and every department line by line and see what we can do to save additional monies and additional funds.
Okay. Timothy?
In terms of personnel funding here in the city of Pueblo, I believe that is something that should never be off the table, and as Mr. Mader pointed out, can be constantly negotiated on a performance basis and is something that we can do immediately to even increase the number of city employees that we have a great number of vacancies, as I'm aware of, and I'm sure you are aware of. So we can use that renegotiated performance salary to not only incentivize our current city employees to perform better, but take away funding from any entity or any government employee that is underperforming to the level that is demanded of them from Pueblo citizens as civil servants and reallocated elsewhere as needed. And so, no, I don't believe we should freeze salaries for city employees. Thank you.
Okay. Chris?
Could you repeat the question for me?
Sure. We're talking about whether the amendment, if it doesn't pass, that there's an impact. And since salaries is such a significant part of the city's budget, would you consider a plan to freeze or even cut salaries in order to maintain staffing levels?
Well, I can tell you that the principle of that very question is already in place. We look at the directors' salaries throughout the city. They have not received, most all of them have not received a raise at all in the last 4 years. We've had tremendous support from our unions, understanding where we are economically. They have got on the bandwagon. I think we're in an economic structure that requires this city to begin to go back to being a charter-centric city. Start with what the role of government is supposed to be first, public safety, roads, highways, infrastructure, and then work out from there. But I want to just commend the city. I mean, we've frozen upwards of 90 positions in a community of 110,000 some odd people. And I think all of the city employees have done a great job and have bought off to the economic structure. Now, that being said, should we continue to look at that? I sure hope not. You know, the encouragement is to the community. You can't you can't continue to shop in Springs, Denver. We really need to build up our retail base and our sales tax base. You can continue to cut until you have absolutely nobody running the city. You won't have anybody paving the streets. You won't have anybody filling the potholes. So what do you have in choice? Your other choice is you've got to figure out a way to create new revenues within the city. And believe it or not, we've never had, until recently, we've never had an arm of the city that actively recruits small business, supports small business, incentivizes small business, as well as retail. And I think it's critical that we continue to build up our revenue base as well.
Okay. Larry?
Cities all over the country are dealing with the same dilemma in that 75% of the city's budget goes to salaries for its employees. If you're a businessman, that's unsustainable. There's just no way that you can do that. But this is government, and government costs more than the average business and the way business is done. In order to deal with that situation that Steve brought to us is by literally building or growing the pie, so to speak. When I was on city council before, I advocated that we build a 4-diamond softball complex. I advocated that the 50-meter indoor pool that's going to go in at the Riverwalk be brought forward a little bit more. People in those two activities tell me that they can bring in $10 million worth of economic activity into this city every year just with those two entities. Grow the pie. Bring in more businesses. Bring in things that will bring people to the city so they could spend their money. Any person that does fundraising, if you have a spaghetti dinner and you have 50 people in your group and you invite those 50 people to your spaghetti dinner, you're not fundraising. You bring people from outside to bring their money into your fundraiser, so to speak. That's what we have to do. I brought up the idea of the half-cent sales tax for college education. That's just one idea. How about some other ideas? Let's think about bringing in businesses that deal with the lumber industry in the mountains or the cactus industry out in the prairies. We have walking stick cactus out there that we could probably retail all over the country. These are just, it doesn't seem like a viable, but it's an idea that we have to start thinking about. We just can't sit back and say, no, we don't have any money, we can't do anything. That's not the idea. We have to grow the pie, so to speak.
Brian, do you have any more thoughts on this topic? Oh, I'm sorry, Stephen.
Remember
Yes.
me?
Sorry.
Thank you, Steve. I think Councilman Kaufman, really, his answer was very reflective of the present council. And I think that we have a pretty lean government right now. Over 80 positions have not been filled, not through layoffs, but through attrition. I think the employees have been tremendously responsive in terms of being able to keep the cost of increased salaries and benefits down. And I also think that we have to prioritize the core services of our city. So if 1A doesn't pass, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board. And my guess is that collectively we will be looking at the non-departmental budgets, which make up about $4.6 total million of our $75 million proposed budget for next year. So those would be the organizations and the programs and the fees that we pay. That's where we're going to have to give the biggest hit. I don't think we can cut much more. We have a responsibility to maintain services to our citizens, and we also have a responsibility to balance the budget. And I don't think we do that on the back of our city employees and the services that they give to our citizens. So it'll be tough, but unprecedentedly, we've had 2 years in a row of $3 million deficits. It's not because of inefficiencies and lack of good management skills in running our city. It's a lack of revenue, so we also need to look at creating more jobs and bringing more people to our community. So those issues, I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more later. But again, I do think you can be proud that right now we have a pretty lean city, and I think that's good. Our sales tax collection has not gotten back to the 2007 level, if you can believe that. For the last 3 years, it's been on the increase, but we still are not at the level of collection that we were in 2007. So we have a lot of work yet to do in our community, so thank you.
Okay. Brian, do you have any other thoughts on this?
I do. The most important thing that we need to do here, it sounds like, is we need to increase economic development. I believe that's the most important thing that we can do in this entire city. That's all I have.
Timothy?
As every candidate up here has pointed out, we do need to increase the amount of business, not only small but big as well, to increase the revenue streams here in our city. And through the increased revenues that business creates, we can continue to fill vacancies in any position in any department that we need to fill. Thank you.
Chris?
Thank you. You know, there's an element out there that needs to be modernized as well. We're talking regional building, we're talking the health department, we're talking the planning and community development department of the city. We need to begin to modernize our ordinances, modernize our land use regulations, and appear to be open for business to entities that are looking to expand or grow in Pueblo, Colorado. And I just really believe that we need to put some attention to these entities so that it looks like we care about ourselves. I think a lot of times we are getting calls. I'm very familiar with multiple calls of people wanting to consider Pueblo, but have not had any real place to go to get their answers. And therefore, they don't believe Pueblo is really open for business. And if Pueblo is Colorado's southern capital, which I believe it is, we need to make sure that we are marketing that, and we have to have an open for business sign out on all entrances into our community.
Okay. Larry?
If we're going to provide salaries for all of our employees, we have to do exactly what Mr. Kaufman said and bring other businesses in. But that's easy to say. Every politician out there, their first words out of their mouth is economic development and bring in jobs. But how do you do that? Right now, Pedco has 2 or 3 buildings that if a company came into Pueblo, they could only show them 2 or 3 buildings that this company could ultimately move into. We need 5 or 6 buildings out there. Maybe we should use some of that economic development money to bring 2 or 3 more spec buildings into the industrial parks. We need to build a workforce. Again, maybe we should use some of that money to send people to college and to train them. When Vestas hired these extra 100 or 200 people out when they ramped up again, a lot of the people that they hired were from outside of Pueblo. We should have sent our kids to Pueblo Community College where they have the training to train these people to go to become welders. We should have sent them there to go to Vestas.
Steve?
Well, I think obviously there's a common theme among all of us about growing the pie and increasing the revenue. And I can assure you that it's easier said than done for anyone running for office or aspiring to it. I've had the good fortune to serve on the Pedco board for the last 3 years, being one of the representatives on city council. And I can see how difficult it has been to try to attract employers to our community. That's why I think quality of life is a big thing, because a lot of the people that do come to our community and look at expanding their businesses for their families, education and quality of life is very important. We don't really have a lot to say over education, but we can be supportive of making sure that we have the best possible educational system within this part of the state. So I do think that increasing the revenue base, as difficult as it is, we still have to continue to plow forward and making that a priority in our community.
Okay, Timothy, you'll handle this question first. We've been talking about economic development. Do you think the half-cent sales tax for Pedco remains the best approach, or do you think there ought to be a ballot issue to redefine how that money should be used?
That's a very good question. I'm glad I had the opportunity to address it. And the answer is I do believe that we need another ballot initiative to redefine how we spend that money and how it's actually going to produce economic development. Pedco is it's done a decent job with what we have. We don't have a lot of resources, as Councilman Nawrocki pointed out, and they do what they can, but we can, I believe, do better. And as I walked around the city these last couple of months, that was one of the #1 concerns being addressed by our citizens, and that was PEDCO. And if we can continue to utilize the contacts and the work that they've done and improve upon it with a little more community input, or however we're going to go about doing that, however that ballot initiative would be worded would of course come from citizens. It would probably be run through the council at some point as well. But we need to improve economic development to the speediest point that it can be at in terms of unemployment, somewhere around 10% in this city. That's around 10,000 people unemployed, and that number needs to go down as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Chris?
Well, that's a great question. I asked the PEDCO board that very question last April, and I asked them, I said, you guys are working off of a 35-year-old model. Does it still work? Because we are looking at you, the Board of Economic Development, to tell us, the City Council, is this what really works still? Or should we begin to look at taking a new definition to the voters? It's one of the reasons where I felt like it was important for me to call my own meetings together and ask, what are the issues that are currently in place here in Pueblo, Colorado, that prevent job growth? You know, in 2012, we had 500 new people come to Pueblo. Most of those people were by birth. Why is that? And until we begin to learn how to answer that question, when we had brought a company to Pueblo that were potential of 1,000 jobs, and their CEO and their president, they said, we're in, we're coming. They brought their middle management in. They said, we're not coming, and they never came. Why is that? What do we have to attend to? We have to be able to tell the story. Everyone here knows that Pueblo works. I know Pueblo works. Everybody up here knows that Pueblo works. But we've got to be able to find a way to tell that story so that people don't just continue to look at incentive-based growth. You know, they don't continue to look at census tracts to make their decision. We've got to tell the story of why Pueblo works and why we've had so many successful businesses come out of this community. But we need to take a look at as city council, we need to take a look at all sectors of job growth. You know, we have some assets in our community, such as the railroads. We have 2 premium level hospitals, and we probably, rather than start shotgunning our approach to economic development, we need to really probably start focusing in and target shooting some of these entities to consider Pueblo. I think our rail yards are some of the most untapped assets that we have in our community. Thank you.
Larry?
I sort of answered that question with the idea of building 2 or 3 spec buildings out of our industrial parks. Another idea is to bring railroad infrastructure into this town. Up north in the Denver area, north of Denver, they literally do not have any more room to put in any more railroad infrastructure. We have all the room plus 2 railroads that service this area that we could put in railroad infrastructure. And as far as education, again, let me reiterate, PEDCO does provide training to companies and their employees, but we need to do a little bit more. They got between $35 and $40 million in their coffers to bring people in. Maybe we should spend $500,000 of that a year to send 500 kids to college at a $1,000 scholarship apiece. I'm just suggesting that you don't have to do it. I'm just saying that's an idea. Maybe we ought to think out of the box just a little bit. As far as doing away or manipulating the half-cent sales tax, I don't care for that at all. It's worked. It's worked in the past. It'll work in the future. We should dedicate that towards primary jobs and keep going that direction. As far as other ideas, well, I served on the board of directors for PEDCO for 3 years also when I was on city council. I suggested to them then the spec buildings and railroad. And we're working at the speed of government. Remember, We got to work a little faster. We got to work a little harder. We got to start doing a little bit better. We got to put those departments to work, and we got to make sure that they're directed from the top, not from the middle, but from the top, and that's City Council, to direct our city departments as to how they're going to spend that money, what departments they're going to do, what ideas they're going to come to fruition, and in terms of economic development, where to go looking for those jobs. You need a leader out there.
Okay. Steve?
After 3 years of working closely with Petco and City Council, I do feel that when the ordinance is up for a vote again, that manufacturing is the model and primary jobs, I think still is a stable thing that we need to continue. But I also believe we have an emerging industry, and that is tourism. We have a freeway that goes by us, and how many people do we get off that freeway? We don't even have signs on the freeway that say what we have in the center city. So I do think that we need to tweak it. We need to make it a little bit more flexible. I think we need to look at Colorado defines tourism as developing primary jobs. I think we need to be able to elevate that. Back in the 80s when the ordinance first came into existence, undoubtedly nobody was thinking about tourism as an emerging primary job developer, but I think now it is, and we need to have the flexibility to support that with infrastructure. And infrastructure also, I think anything that contributes to making our community more viable for attracting new employers. Santa Fe Avenue is a disgrace in our community. I think you bring new employers to our community, that would be one of the first streets that I think that should be able to be taken care of. We don't have it within our regular budget. We need to make sure that we contribute to it to help develop economic development in our community.
Okay. Brian?
I agree with Chris. You know, the people of Pueblo voted for that tax 30 years ago. The economy in Pueblo is about the same today as it was then. The funding is designed to bring primary manufacturing jobs. We are to attract, retrain, expand primary jobs for our community. We need to assure that we present an opportunity for excellent quality of life. We have the university and community college here to do research and job training. I believe the next time that we ask the people to approve the tax, we need to address whether or not we want to spend the money expanding present business. Thank you.
Timothy, any other thoughts?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to bring up one of the major issues I believe that is preventing business to further expand and be drawn into Pueblo, and that would be our reputation around the state of Colorado. I have listened to people from all over the state, and the common consensus, I hate to say the word, but they consider Pueblo ghetto, and I don't. I've lived here my whole life. I love it here. But as long as we allow that reputation to be maintained throughout the state, we're unlikely to attract new businesses as quickly as we'd like. So we need to advertise Pueblo in a more productive light. And on top of that, I would like to bring up creating white-collar jobs as well, not just blue-collar jobs. Those are important as well, but we have an entire university of students who graduate and then leave Pueblo because they have no jobs for them here. And that is something that we need to consider moving forward with the future of Pueblo. Thank you.
Chris?
Thank you. You know, the half-cent sales tax is a tremendous gift that you, the voters, have given to this community. And you've given it to us multiple times for 5-year sections. City Council's you are the owners of that fund. City Council is simply the caretaker. I think if there's going to be any alternatives presented or any options to how we use that half-cent sales tax fund, it's going to come from you, the voters. I think you're going to look to us to give you some options, but I think still this is your tax. This is your pot of gold, and we need to make sure that we are managing it correctly and for the best use of this community. So I would hand that right back to the voters with necessary options, and if you say yes, let's go, or no, let's don't, it's your package. Thank you.
Okay. Larry?
More aggressive recruitment, education, and touting the culture of our city. We're a multi-ethnic, multi-racial community that is rich in culture, rich in work ethic. That's one thing that we probably could start marketing a little bit better. In terms of bringing more jobs to Pueblo, we're probably 3/4 or so into a recession that just devastated the country. Every city out there is trying to bring in new jobs and new industries. A more worthwhile effort probably is worth doing. Leadership from City Council is of the utmost importance, and leadership from City Council to lead and in terms of directing PEDCO and the city departments and economic development people. That's where it comes from, leadership at City Council.
Okay. Steve?
Thank you. The last 4 years, in cooperation with PEDCO, a previous city council and the present one, collectively we have created over 400 jobs. And I tell you, it's been a tough 4 years to be able to do that. A lot of smaller companies have come to Pueblo, but also we have been able to see in the last 6 months that Vestas now is up to full capacity, and Everest has continued to increase their employee base by the fact that they're providing some of the best rail within the world. So I think that we need to not only attract new businesses, but we also need to support existing businesses for expansion. And so I think whatever we do in terms of looking at that sales tax again, we have to look within our community what we can also do to expand our economic base.
Okay. Brian?
If we're going to grow as a city, we need to overcome our greatest challenge in meeting standards with K through 12 education system, reduce the crime rate, have a stable political government supportive of recruiting new businesses and following through on commitments. Thank you.
Okay. Chris, you'll handle this question first. There's been a push for a Citizens Police Review Board that would have much more than just an advisory role. How do you feel about that?
You know, I think this Citizen Review Board has grown to a kind of a boiling point, and there's probably some justification. What I don't like is taking a small fraction of what is the police force and saying that our police force is in bad disarray, because I don't believe that to be the case. And I think these 10% of the people who potentially are making a bad name for the community, for the police department, you know, they're somewhat protected by contract. And so I think a lot of the blame goes toward the chief, and it's probably undue because there's different protections that are currently in place. And that all being said, you know, I do believe that the Human Relations Commission has set aside has been the entity that has been set aside to be that police review board. I think that they have taken an additional step to work with professionals in the field. I'm not a believer of having the ROTC lead the Marine Corps into battle. And I think when you start putting a citizens review board together that has not done policing, has not been on the streets, has not been in a police vehicle at 1 or 2 in the morning on a Friday night, that has not dealt with what the judge deals with, either in the district court or in the municipal court, I think it's pretty presumptuous. So I think it's very, very important that if there's going to be a citizens review board, that it's with the people who are doing this particular role to what extent or another, all day, every day as part of their job. And that's where I think we're going to get the best use of our time, the best use of the intellect that we have in this community. And I think we really need to make sure that when we get a chance, you know, we need to tell our police force that we appreciate what they're doing, because nobody knows what they deal with on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
Okay. Larry?
At one time, I was in complete agreement and in favor of a community review board for the police department. Recently, they put together an entity that will deal with complaints. I believe that we should give this group a chance to see what happens with that complaint department, so to speak, that they have. In terms of supporting the police department, if you're a good police officer and you do well, you respect your constituents and you treat them with respect and you don't disrespect them at every turn, I'm 110% behind you. But if you're going to be out there disrespecting people simply because of their economic status, or because you believe that they're doing something wrong, or because they might be doing something wrong, I'm going to be 110% against you. And every single police officer that I've talked to, when I tell them that, they are in full agreement that that's exactly how it should be in terms of what city council and the city councilmen are dealing with in terms. Yeah, they do have a hard job. They have an extremely hard job. There's no way that I would ever want to do that job, because you only see people at their worst most of the time. But that's one of those jobs, when you take that job on, you're not the ultimate authority, you're not the judge, jury, and executioner. You're the person who takes people into custody and delivers them to the judicial system. That's all you do. You don't put your own morals and ethos in front and try to change people because you believe that they should be done a certain way. If you're doing it right, I'm 110% behind you. If you're doing it wrong, I'm 110% against you.
Steve?
You know, I think it's important for a third party to be involved. I think transparency is very important. I think it's important that we continue to have a police department that's responsive to the needs of our citizen. And I also think that right now there's been an effort made by a independent group working with HRC to try to come together to see if they can serve that purpose. You know, another way of looking at it, if there was a need for that, in community relations for the police department, I don't think they should ever not want that to be in the best interest for them. But when it comes to disciplining officers and investigating, you know, I think that's still left up to the internal affairs within the police department. And you also have an active union within the department. And so there are certain rights that all the employees have that are police officers, and those internal affairs, I think, still should be left up to the department themselves. But I do think we should never be afraid of having a third party that can be impartial and work closely with the police department to make them the best possible department in terms of serving the needs of our citizen.
Okay. Brian?
I had the opportunity to ride along with the police department about 2 months ago. I've seen many things. I went for 10 hours on that shift that night. I noticed that night that there was a lot of, they weren't invited to birthday parties. They didn't receive Christmas cards. They came into the action at the worst time of people's life. We're always going to have good cop, bad cop. We're always going to have good people, bad people. I do feel that we need to do the same thing. They have a union. They have an internal affairs, and we need to hold them to a higher standard. If they are out beating citizens and doing the things that we're hearing out there, then we need to hold them to a higher standard, and they need to be prosecuted with the law.
Timothy?
Thank you. As we've all pointed out and we all are all aware, it's only a small percentage of the police department. There's always going to be bad apples in any department. So I'd just like to point out that Pueblo is a very safe city, and I'm never afraid in hardly any neighborhood to walk down the street, even in the middle of the night. And I would attribute that to our Pueblo police officers, and I'd like to thank them for that and their hard work. I do, however, believe that a citizen review board is a necessary step here in the city of Pueblo, simply because the citizens want it. And as elected officials, it is our duty to listen to the will of the people and, I hate to be cliche, but give the people what they want. And I've heard numerous accounts while out there trying to campaign about police impropriety and having their complaints fall on deaf ears, more or less. And I know that they're very busy people, and as many departments are, they are understaffed, and they do the best with what they have. I had a good statement here. Here it is. People ask, who polices the police a lot? And to respond to that question, I believe it's us, the citizens. They're civil servants, and we are the people who are ultimately responsible for their behavior. If we condone inappropriate actions, and allow it to continue unimpeded, it will continue unimpeded. So I believe a citizen review board is a very good measure that the people have asked for. Thank you.
Chris, any other thoughts?
Yes, thank you. You know, look, if you're angry with the police department, be angry with the city council. The city council, while they have no authority over the chief and they have no authority over the police department, they do set the tone. They set the principles as to how we're going to formulate the budget. And once the budget is, the direction is given to the city manager, it's up to him to let his departments, including the police, know what the direction council would like to go. If we have a police force that is not full to capacity, we're going to be putting undue stress and undue pressure on the policemen that are out on the streets. And that's not always a good thing for all parties involved. So you need to make sure that you ask your council people, you need to go back to the charter, start there, and work your way out. You need to be charter-centric. You need to be focused on taking care and the protection of the city and its citizens. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Larry?
As I said before, I was in favor of a community review board in the past because of this new entity that they put together. I hold judgment in the future if need be, and we need a citizens review board, then let's put one in place. I don't think they have anything to hide. One of the sayings of the police department is, if you're not doing anything wrong, then you don't have anything to worry about. Well, if they're not doing anything wrong, they shouldn't have anything to worry about.
Steve?
Again, let me make it clear that I do believe that there should be a third entity involved with the police department. I do believe that internally the police should be able to determine what type of discipline needs to be given if it is needed. And I also believe City Council has a responsibility to supply the resources in order for our police department to be responsive to the needs of our citizens.
Okay. Brian?
I feel it's not fair to the citizens. The budget for the police department has not kept up with the growth and remains flat. Not only do the citizens suffer personal losses and property damage, but their insurance rate increased, and in many cases, the community rating is lower because of crime. And the entire neighborhood incurs a higher insurance rate. The number of boots on the street daily is not adequate after sundown. Maybe it's just too much stress on these police officers. Maybe it's something that we need to take a look at.
Yes, thank you. There was something, I believe it was Mr. Atencio brought up, and it's that if you're not a police officer, then you don't know what they're going through, and you don't understand the stresses that they go through every single day. And to many degrees, that's a very true statement, but also there's a degree of common sense, and citizens of Pueblo do realize when they are witnessing inappropriate behavior from a police officer, a neighbor, or anybody else. It's just who we are as people. And if you witness something like this in a police officer, you should be held accountable for those actions. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Chris? Or are we done? We're done, okay. We're down to our last question, and Larry, you'll handle this one. We've talked a fair amount tonight about Pueblo's image, but it is a reality that blight is a pretty big problem in Pueblo, and whether it's weeds or rundown houses or whatever, but that has an impact on crime, economic development, and other areas. How would you address this issue?
Image of Pueblo. Image from the Colorado Springs county line north is that we're a lunch bucket town, ignorant, blue-collar, steel-working people who have less than everybody else. That's not true. A few years ago, when I first got on City Council my first year, Barbara Vidmeyer and I and City Council started an effort to beautify the city. Thanks to Barbara Vidmeyer, we did a lot of projects, just little corners here and there to beautify the city as much as we possibly could. I think that's one of the things that we should do, is try to concentrate and try to get back to that and try to beautify our cities as much as we possibly can. We have a university up here that's second to none. Its business school is one of the top 20% in the country in terms of its academic excellence. The Pueblo Community College is a great community college. Again, our zoo, the art center, everything about Pueblo has a lot to be reckoned with. This image that other people around the state have. Do we spend more money on marketing Pueblo and telling them how cute we are and how nice we are? I don't know. I'm not one of those people who is an isolationist and wants to keep Pueblo at 107,000 population for the next 100 years. I think we should grow. But by the same token, every single one of us in this room just loves Pueblo for what it is. Let's beautify it. Let's make it better. Let's educate our children. Let's send our kids to a good K through 12 school. Let's send them to Colorado State University Pueblo Community College. Let's train them to do the jobs that are coming in the 21st century. Let's work towards being good to each other, if anything else. One thing about Pueblo that is really good is that you can walk down the street and you'll probably bump into 2 or 3 people that you meet and you'll say hello, and that's the beauty of Pueblo. Let's keep that going.
Okay. Steve?
Well, I think it all starts with jobs and education. When people feel that they can provide for their family, and when people feel like they have the ability to be competitive in their community, I think they're going to take pride in their houses, their neighborhoods. So I think we need to support the efforts to continue job growth and education reform within our community. Also, I think we need to make sure organizations like Urban Renewal really are addressing blight in our community. I think we need to support programs like Neighbor Works. We need to support the housing department within the city, and also our community neighborhood associations that are out there on the front line working with the neighborhoods. We also need to make sure that we have great support from our city departments and also be responsive to the needs within the different neighborhoods, and make sure that neighbors are being responsible and not be so punitive, but try to educate people at the importance of taking care of their property. I think we have a beautiful city. I think there's a lot of people that have contributed to making it so. We have a great city center from downtown to Union Avenue to the Junction area. Tremendous growth has taken place. Over $200 million has been invested in the city center, whether through private investment or through government investment. We need to continue having that expand to our neighborhoods and making sure that we take care of our citizens' needs also.
Okay. Brian?
You know, Pueblo's image is very important to us, and a lot of it comes down to trash. The fact is, 50,000 households in the city do not participate, or 50,000 households, there's 50,000 households in the city and 20,000 people do not participate in the trash. We need to come up with a plan. We need to get removal of trash, 100% participation of homeowners. Presently, there is not a plan, there's a plan out there to collect trash and fine a citizen $1,000. They can't afford $15. How are we gonna fine them $1,000? The participation paid through the water board, we need to get participation paid through the water board like the process they use to collect water fees and stormwater. Affordable, 100% participation, maybe $12 per household. That would increase the destiny more accounts in the same neighborhoods by using less fuel in the trucks and possibly creating new jobs. Thank you.
Okay. Timothy?
As I pointed out earlier, the image of Pueblo is something that needs to be greatly improved upon, and one of the ways we can do that, I believe, is through advertising in other cities across the state, and I believe that we can do that also by improving our public education system and having more productive citizens as they emerge from the high school level to get immediate work and become immediate productive members of society. And the other thing I would and have brought up before is to increase the number of white-collar jobs here in the city so we can have CSU students bringing their productivity, their creativity, their work ethic here to the city and allow them to help us with that, and that would definitely improve our image. We would also be wise to incentivize public involvement here in the city and in things like the neighborhood watch and get people involved in that, and that would also bring down crime, take some of the burden off our police, as we've spoken on before, and also to work with the DA's office and the judicial branches here in the city to start tacking on a little bit of community service in their sentencing of some of our violators, and have them out there not just cleaning up graffiti, but pulling weeds, doing gardening, picking up garbage, sweeping up the streets, and just making our city more presentable and more appealing to anybody who would want to come here and either provide economic development or just want somewhere to live that's good for their children and their families. Thank you.
Okay. Chris?
Well, I want to take the statement from what needs to be done to some of the things that I have done in this. I was on the Urban Renewal Authority Board. I have been for about 8 years, and it was what gave me the impetus to be on City Council. But what I realize is that there are a lot of well-meaning entities out there, all with the idea of some sort of beautification and somehow some capital maintenance. And so what I thought we should probably do is get all those groups, from merchants associations to neighborhood associations to Public Works Department to the Parks Department. Let's get them together and create an entity that I call the Pueblo Pride City Partnership. Remember the days of Pride City, Pueblo Pride City? You know, it's kind of dissipated somewhat. And I think it's important when we have events coming, when we have large numbers of people that are going to be coming to visit Pueblo, Wild Wild West Fest, Chili Fest, State Fair, we have direct contact with the Pueblo Pride City Partnership to remind them, hey, if you've adopted a street, if you've adopted a park, if you've done something, if you've got a merchants association, now would be the time to get out and start cleaning it up. I've been to the State Highway Commission talking about the importance of eliminating or doing something that will eliminate the single most blighted part of our community, and that's the interstate through Pueblo. And we know some of the things that have happened as that. We have an Adopt a Street program, and while that had begun a long time ago, if you adopt a street, what do? So I created a maintenance guide for anybody and everybody who adopts a street, and it goes by quarter. What am I supposed to do? I'm going to sweep curbs, I'm going to pick weeds, I'm going to pick trash, I'm going to cut weeds to a certain level, I'm going to monitor trees, I'm going to trim trees. None of that was ever done. Well, it's now out there. I've introduced a capital maintenance plan. Why? Because it's important. Once we put all these major entities down to begin developing these properties, say Lowe's, for example, why not hold them accountable to how are they going to maintain their properties for the next 2 years, so that they understand that we're not just about putting this on. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay, we will. Larry, any other thoughts?
I too was on the Urban Renewal Board for probably 3 or 4 years while I was on City Council. I think that's an arm of the city that could be utilized and probably underutilized right now in terms of revitalizing our neighborhoods. We worked on a couple of neighborhoods in the east side of town. I brought $2.2 million into the 3 apartment buildings at the corner of 4th and Hudson. They were on the historic register, so we couldn't tear them down. So we brought in money to refurbish them. Now they're transitional housing for homeless veterans. Beautiful buildings that brought up the neighborhood. Things like that are needed all over the city in terms of getting and rebuilding and refurbishing our communities. Single-family housing, affordable housing for people who need affordable housing. Our children are not going to be able to afford the houses that we live in. That next generation is going to work and live poorer than we are if we don't help them get that affordable housing.
Steve?
Well, again, I think that we need to continue to figure out a way to put people to work and educate our citizens as best possible. Also, we need to continue the work that we have been doing on a trash ordinance, so we'll give people by choice who they have to pick up their trash, but everybody have to be able to have a trash carrier. I also think it's important that we enforce the ordinances that we already have and provide the staffing needed to do that and be fair in how we enforce that. And I think we need to support our neighborhood associations in all the redevelopment efforts that already are taking place in our community.
Brian?
Let's create a residential downtown district and revive the city's core. Let's focus on the creation and growing of small businesses in the downtown neighborhoods. I noticed a couple weeks ago at the council meeting, the conciliars were putting up and had an ordinance to put out a nice art sculpture deal downtown by the Union Depot. Let's establish an art and creative district and invest in the downtown lifestyle. With that, we can stimulate the economy activity, expand businesses to include grocers, pharmacy, restaurants, and enhance the entertainment. Thank you.
Timothy?
I would just like to point out some of the things that we could push with the advertising. I believe that goes through the Pueblo City Chamber of Commerce, but I could be wrong. Things like the stills. We have a lot of tradition here in Pueblo that we really can kind of upsell for ourselves, that this is a really good place to live, this is where you want to bring your business, this is where you want your family. And we can also sell things like our history. We have the Union Avenue down there. We got some of the most well-preserved historical buildings in the country, as far as I was told. We have just so many resources and so many great things here in the city of Pueblo that we kind of keep to ourselves. It shouldn't be a secret. We should be spreading our wings a little bit, so to speak, and letting the world know what a great place Pueblo is to live. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, just a couple more things I think are very important. I think everybody knows and realizes that we have a ghost town on the second and third floors in our downtown. And the reason we have that is because it's just getting too cost prohibitive to begin to develop those. That leads to tremendous blight, and it leads to an image problem that we have in our downtown area. So I think we need to begin to incentivize developers to help them fund different ways to put elevators, to eradicate asbestos, lead-based paint, et cetera. That's something that I'm working on currently and would love to continue to working on. It's something that the Pueblo City Center is behind. And I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that if any of you have eaten down at the B Street area and the new cafe outside, I want you to know where that idea came from. Thank you very much.
Okay, that concludes our question and answer portion, and now we'll go to summary statements from each candidate. They'll have 2 minutes to tell you why you think you should vote for them. And we'll go in the inverse order of how we started. So, Steve, you'll go first.
Well, thank you again for this opportunity at Chieftain 2020 and PCC and whoever else was involved. You know, I think one of the most important things that I have felt over the last 4 years is that a council person needs to be accessible and responsive, not just at election time. And I find myself that I have attended numerous events on a regular basis, participated in neighborhood events, and you have to put yourself out there so people feel that you will listen to them and know that you will be responsive to them. So I think that's the number one thing that I am committed to continuing to do, is be accessible and responsive. Economic growth, I am totally committed to continue that. The half-cent sales tax need to continue. I do believe it needs to be tweaked. I need tourism and the creative art corridor need to be part of economic development and infrastructure that also will help attract employers. I do think that planned growth is important. We need to make sure that our community is open for business and business friendly. We need to make sure that our ordinances, and right now, presently, we have staff within the city are going over the ordinances, and they'll be coming back to City Council to make sure that we only are having the ordinances in front of us that are going to be responsive to the needs for builders and developers. And then last of all, I think that it's been an honor. Again, the last 4 years, I've served with a couple different councils. The last 2 years, which I feel like I've been the most beneficial to the city, is that the present council, I think they've done a fine job working together. Councilman Kaufman, he had tough shoes to follow last year as president of City Council. I hope to be able to do him justice and finish out this year. And again, I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Okay. Brian?
It's been a great evening. I hope you got to know me a lot better. I am who I am. I bring honesty, and like all of you, real-life experiences to this campaign. I also bring a passion for service, and I'm blessed to have friends like you standing here with me. As a new councilman, I will have a lot of hard work ahead of me, and I'm ready to serve. I've attended every council meeting since April, and I've learned a lot. I see an opportunity to bring change, and I know I must engage everyone if we want to compete and recruit new companies. I will be active in all efforts to retain, expand, and market our present businesses. I will work and support every effort to recruit new manufacturing jobs. I know our children are depending on us to see that there is a paycheck in every home. I know that every child is depending on you and I to provide opportunities for their future. I care deeply for the people of Pueblo. I am committed to leading with integrity, making decisions based on good data, and actively seeking solutions. I want you to know that I am approachable and my direct number is accessible. Starting in February, I'll be holding monthly meetings rotating throughout the city. I want to include you. I want to hear from you personally, and I want to understand your needs in your neighborhood. I appreciate having the community support, and I will work hand in hand with you all to move Pueblo forward. I want to thank the audience in attendance and extend a sincere thanks to the families that have joined us from home. I would like to thank Mr. Henson and the 2020 Commission for facilitating this forum tonight. Before saying goodnight, I want to thank my family, especially my wife, and my committee for working side by side with me during this campaign. In closing, I would appreciate your support, and I respectfully request your vote. I wish you a good night, and may God bless you.
Okay, Timothy?
I just want to first say thank you for allowing me to participate in this forum, and everyone here has spoken very eloquently and very passionately tonight, so very well done to everybody here. One issue that was not brought up here tonight was the issue of recreational marijuana sales here within the city limits, and I believe that would have an immediate large revenue stream being brought into our city via the taxes that are going to be set very high, and the job creation, the tourism that's going to bring in. So I would definitely like to bring that up as an issue that I would promote heavily. I would like to bring like I said, a sense of community involvement, make sure that every citizen in the city, if it's one, if it's 1,000, if it's all of them, that they feel that they have a voice here on the city council. I would like to work with our council members because this is not a one-man band. We all work together, or would work together, hopefully, to come up with creative solutions to the problems facing our city and to address any concerns brought by any citizens here in the city. And finally, I would like to improve our image here in the state and in the region. As Mr. Kaufman pointed out, we are the capital here in the south of Colorado. This is the business hub. This is the primary place to go for not only Pueblo County, but many of the counties in the surrounding area. And our success impacts more than just Pueblo and Pueblo County. It reaches out through the entire southwest region here. And if we can improve the way our city functions and lower our unemployment here, we can lower the unemployment rate in the state and make our state look great. Thank you.
Chris?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, TV audience. You know, I often get asked a question about my time on city council, and I give them this answer. In 2010, I got into politics not as a politician, but now after 4 years, I'm realizing that the goal is not that. The goal is to get out, not having become one. And I think it's critical that you understand, and it's why I make the comment that it's about Pueblo and not politics. For the last 4 years, I have towed the line on this. I have really tried to understand the initiatives from Pueblo and not from either party. I've not carried a political banner for anyone, nor have I solicited 3 more votes. My initiatives have all stood, and if I'm still elected, will continue to stand on or fall on their own merits. We still have a lot of work to do. We have to prove to this region that Pueblo is open for business. And I wanted to take a few minutes to show you, or a few more seconds to show you a little bit about me. This is the Fast Track Business Assistance Program. Why? If we can get Vestas done in 11 months and all that went into that, if we can get DOS Aviation done in 5 months and all that went into that, we should be able to get a tea shop done in 2 months. Right now, that's not happening. We need to make a difference for our small businesses. This is the rest of the story. Why? We know Pueblo works. As I mentioned earlier, you know it and I know it. We just need to be able to tell the story. We are Colorado's southern capital. This is a great document. If you're interested in looking at it, let me know and I'll get you one. These are incentives that I've handed to the city manager and to the city finance department. Why? We focus so much attention and money on primary job recruitment that a lot of times we mentally forget about the small businesses that is the base of this community. This is what I think we need to do. This is creative ways to help them grow and expand or relocate. This is why I seek your vote. It is imperative that we advocate for small business. It is imperative that we market this community better to all comers, and it is imperative that we modernize our land use ordinances. I will appreciate an opportunity to continue these initiatives, and I'll appreciate your consideration when you vote. Thank you.
Larry?
Well, I outlined a few suggestions that we might be able to bring to Pueblo. Spec buildings or railroad infrastructure or education for our young, half-cent sales tax for college educations. Ideas only. Over the last 2 years, City Council has not come up with one capital project to make your life any better than it was the year before that. Not one. While I was on City Council, we did the police building, we did Memorial Hall, we did the Eastern Gateway. That was $1.2 million that we brought in. The $2.2 million for the transitional housing. The $2.2 million that came in for the skate park that's going to be built. I worked with the library district to do another $2.2 million library on the east side, and then a couple of other libraries around the county. You need a person that's going to bring you ideas. You don't have to put every idea that I put forward into work or make it come true. But you need someone that's going to bring you fresh, new ideas. Leadership that's going to make our lives just a little bit better in this town. How are we going to do that? By bringing people in who are going to work for you. People are always asking me, Larry, when I was on City Council, what are you going to do about this? The first thing I would ask them is, what are you going to do about this? You tell me. And if you're willing to lead the initiative, I'll back you as far as I can go on City Council. I'm one vote on City Council. I can't make all the decisions. You put together an initiative, I will help push that initiative through for you. I need your help. The city needs your help. Volunteer at every crossroads that you could possibly get into. Whether it's the zoo or whether it's the art center or whether it's picking up trash, whatever it is, the answer is with the citizens of Pueblo. And I want to be the leader to take those initiatives forward. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being such a respectful audience. This is a tough time to be in politics or to be in public office. And I think we owe a real debt of gratitude to these 5 gentlemen for being willing to serve us. A quick reminder that you should have received your ballots by now. If you haven't, you probably need to stop by the county clerk's office. And of course, they need to be in by November 5th. We're going to take a break, and then we will set up for the next City Council forum, which will begin in about 15 minutes. Thank you and good evening.